Hiya, this is David Rocco Facchini, and you are listening to the WoMo Studio podcast. Today we are happy to have with us Mike, Owens, and Wendie Owens of WoMo Studio. Mike and Wendie partnered up for this studio, and their combined experience include work on Animaniacs, Space Jam, the Emmy award-winning series Danger and Eggs, and most recently, the Oscar-winning animated short film Hair Love. So without further ado, let's get over and talk to Mike and Wendie. Hi everybody, this is David, and I am here with Mike and Wendie Owens of WoMo Studios. Mike and Wendie are going to be jurors for the Mo Stop Mo Shorts Fest that's happening in Oakland on April 4th, 2020. Mike and Wendie also run WoMo Studios in St. Paul, Minnesota, where their combined experience is really cool. They met early on in the studio environment working on I guess they're not shorts, but the series, working on Animaniacs, Hysteria, Tiny Toons, Pinky and the Brain, Space Jam, or was that more just you, Wendie?
That was definitely more all Wendie.
Okay.
Yeah, I did
She did all of Space Jam. I don't know if you guys know that.
Used to be called Wendie Jam.
Wendie Jam.
Then Jordan was pissed.
Yeah.
And then you guys have kind of gone and branched out and done your things. Wendie is a prolific storyteller, very science-minded, and she has worked with a lot of educational institutions, more recently with the Science Museum of Minnesota. But she is into space and culture and a lot of that kind of stuff. Yes?
Yeah, that's why we called it Space Jam.
Oh, yeah. Is that what got you into Space Jam?
That's what got me into Space Jam.
Okay. Mike became integrated into the Minnesota animation scene working at a studio that no longer is based in Minnesota called Puny, but in that time he was able to establish a series that got picked up by Amazon called Danger and Eggs, in which he garnered an Emmy for Best Direction on an episode or for a series?
For the series.
Okay. And since then, WoMo has worked on, most recently, Hair Love, which just won Oscar Best Animated Short. So thanks, guys, for letting me invade your home and just kind of hang out with you and pick your brains a little bit.
Well, if anyone's going to invade our home, we'll let it be you, Dave.
And why is that?
How
How have I earned that honor?
Because,
Just because I have some dirt on you?
Yeah, a little bit of that, a little bit of blackmail, and a little bit of, we don't have to impress you.
And consider me unimpressed.
Yeah, good. Win-win.
Yeah, I've known Mike and Wendie from way back. We all met in Chicago. Mike and I were in animation classes together at Columbia, where we also met Greg, who is another one of the co-creators for this idea that we are still trying to make into a reality called Monkey and Car. And then I shortly after that met Wendie because Mike and Greg were working at a studio in Homewood called Star Toons, and that's where they were working on those Warner Brothers, or if you're more hip, the WB package of animation. So when I met Greg and Mike, I shortly met Wendie afterwards, and we've kind of annoyed each other ever since.
And here we are.
And here we are annoying each other, you know. Does that sound correct?
That sounds pretty correct, right? Wendie, you have doubts in your eyes.
I love Wendie's eyes because she does this thing where she just stares at you and she won't say anything with her mouth, which is not necessarily the best for an audio podcast, but if this was like a video stream, you guys would be like, wow, this is like the best acting I've ever seen. She says more with her eyes than her mouth ever does.
Well, here's the thing. Here's why that happens. Being female, I've been trained to not speak. And
so, Mike, what do you have to say about that? No, I'm just teasing. Yeah. No, this is really true. Like, I actually am glad you brought that up because it's something that I wanted to talk about. We were talking about like strong female leaders, especially in the animation community, where I feel like there needs to be that shift. So instead of me talking over you, like I'm doing.
Case in point.
Yes. Well, I am the host, so I do have a little bit of swagger here. But yeah, let's talk more about that, like what we were talking about earlier. I mean, I know you were kind of like tongue in cheek, but is that coming from a real place?
Which part?
like how you were saying, as a woman, you kind of would be more like standing back with your eyes, kind of like, what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's like most places in the world. Animation has been, for as long as it's existed in the United States, a pretty male-dominated place. Women have always been a part of it, but not the main part of it, not the heroes of it.
Right. So, like, was that something that when you first started getting into animation, like, was that something that occurred to
No.
you, or something you just like? Where did you discover that along the way in the industry? And I don't want to. I'm not trying to like impugn any like studios or anything, because I think it ended up being like one of those unconscious cultural things, or maybe partially conscious, but it was like I remember you saying was a little bit like a boys' club.
Well, the thing is, like, I didn't really know what to call it. I wouldn't have said, oh, it's a boys' club, and I couldn't identify it when I was in it. It was just kind of...
It just existed.
It just was like, instead of being like, oh, they don't want me there because I'm a woman, I would always be like, oh, I'm not good enough, That would always be the reaction to it.
Right.
So I just took it as self-doubt.
Okay.
Mostly.
So when you were at like these earlier studios,
Yeah.
and you were kind of feeling this, and you were kind of just questioning yourself as an artist, which I think is probably a common thing among all artists entering the professional realm.
Yeah.
Did you have anyone that you felt like that you would commiserate with? I know that you had a friendship that started with Mike over in Homewood at Startoons, but I was like, did you have other people that you would kind of like bounce this off of, or were you just kind of
Oh my
dealing?
God, no.
Okay.
I just tried really hard to be better. Yeah.
What did that look like to you? How did that work out for you? Like, were you becoming better, and was it becoming recognized, I guess, is the shorter question.
I don't really know. I mean, it's pretty competitive, and like there were a lot of people that were super supportive and recognized that. I mean, I was, one of like maybe 3 women in the studio, I think.
And what did you do in the studio? Like, let's like as an example at Startoons.
At Startoons, I did some episodic directing, I guess. Hysteria. But like when I started, I started at the bottom of the rung. I was a student. I got hired at Startoons to be an assistant animator. I did effects animation. I did some background painting. I did production assistance. Just whatever needed to be done, I did.
So you were kind of just, I mean, which probably all helped you inform what would eventually be like directing, like episodic directing and stuff like that. And as you were doing this, what was the experience? Like, did you feel like you were getting the same type of respect or
I mean, I
inclusion?
never ever thought I was better than anyone. Like, that just did not exist. I mean, because I know that there's a lot of people that can draw a lot better than I can, or, have a lot better handle on the craft than I do. And I'm not trying to be like self-deprecating. It's just, when you work in a studio and you work with talented people, you have a big level of respect for everyone else. And so I never was like thinking, oh my God, I'm not good enough.
So you felt like you belonged. You felt like you had the amount of talent that warranted you being there, but you were also kind of like, you said you still felt like you were on the outside of it, or no?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't want to, challenge it too much.
I mean, it was, it was lonely. I mean, I didn't have a lot of like people I could directly compare my experience to. I mean, I knew it was different, but I was young enough then to not like call it out. I mean,
so like, have you watched recently, there was a woman who gave a video who had worked for Disney and talking about how she was leaving the industry. I don't know if you got a chance to see this online.
I heard about it. I have not watched it. I have my own opinions of it, like not having watched it, which probably aren't fair to share because I don't.
Well, I guess it kind of brings up what I was going to ask next of you, and maybe both of you, if you have something to say about it, is, so you get into the animation industry and you're working on something that is recognizable pretty soon off, not only maybe after you left school, but I know in Mike's case, and maybe this was the case for you, Mike was working at Startoons while he was in school. which in the rest of the department, everyone's like, oh, wow, Mike. And I think Greg was there too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty impressive, and he was like working on things in the animation department of like Pinky and the Brain. I just remember him flipping between the drawings. I was like, shit, that's pretty cool. So the idea of, oh, I'm going to work in the animation industry, or I am working in the animation industry, you have this idea of what it's going to be like. How did the reality of that challenge your fantasy of that? And I'm happy, Mike's laughing.
Yeah, it was just a conversation I was having earlier too. I think the Tinkerbell dust wears off quicker than I expected. It was definitely awesome to like be in it that soon in my career, and not being in LA to sort of be working on a show like Animaniacs. And it was definitely thrilling and it was definitely fun. But the idea of like, shit, this is a lot of work. I still have a lot to learn. Am I good enough to be here? I'll sleep under my desk and not go home at night so that I am good enough to be here. But you can get disillusioned relatively quickly when you realize what it's actually like, because I don't know if schools prepare you for what it's actually like to be in a studio environment. But yeah, I have like these 5-year stints of wanting to walk away from it.
You're saying every 5 years you're like done?
Yeah, I'm like, animation is stupid. I'm moving on. But here I am, 25 years later.
Do you think that's just like typical burnout, or just like I heard you say like you didn't necessarily you were happy that you didn't have to be in the LA environment?
Well, it wasn't like happy that I was or wasn't. It was sort of following what was in front of me. I mean, it was, you get out of school, you're still in school. You're in Chicago, which is not where you're from.
And you're from originally Johnstown,
Pennsylvania. Outside of Pittsburgh.
Which is like, how big of a town is that?
At the time, it was, I don't know, 40,000.
Okay.
I don't know. It's small. It's a steel town, Pennsylvania. Not a place for animation careers. Opportunity is there, you take it. And I just sort of followed that lead as I went.
But then you were talking about burnout.
Burnout, I think, is just going to happen because like the amount of hours you have to put in on the amount of work it takes, the amount of labor it takes to do animation, and at the time, we were still working on the pay by a footage system, like old school system, where you got a rate for footage of film, so 16 frames to a foot of film. You got a rate for whether you're an in-betweener, whether you're a key animator, cleanup artist. But if you got paid like a low hourly rate, it was like $10 an hour or something. And
that wasn't guaranteed either.
That wasn't guaranteed either because you had to like make at least, if you made $400 a week in your base salary, you had to make $400 a week in production just to break even. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you would owe the studio money.
Yeah.
And this wasn't like exclusive to Star Tunes. This was just the old system, and that's, we caught the tail end of it. So you can end up owing the company money in order not to do that, and you're also trying to get better, so you're trying to put in the time to get these things done quickly, because it's how they motivate people to get things done on time. That's the kind of thing that burnout happens really quick, because you're like, oh, this is my income, and people aren't just throwing money at me. But at the same token, people would die to have this job that we have, so you can't let it slip away. Especially, being in the Midwest, these jobs opportunities are few and far between.
But working your butt off so you don't owe your job money
is
kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Psychologically, that was a really hard place to be.
Yeah.
Because the freak out would affect your work.
That's kind of crazy. Well, it kind of also goes back to, you're not necessarily sure how the game is played. And once you're in it, you're just kind of overwhelmed and maybe you're keeping your ears open and your mouth shut because you're just like, I'm in. It's like if there's like a party and they let you in the party, you're just kind of trying to hang and fake it and try to, learn as much as you can, but still like, make a living. But yeah,
it's true. But I will also say that those were some of the most enjoyable times I've ever had. Maybe it's like being the struggle of everyone's kind of in that same position. It's a little war story like. It's a little bit like everyone's in the trenches together. And I think that makes it super fun. And that's where, we all met. And it gets you through it. And those are people that we are still super close with.
Right.
So there's something about the environment that if you find your people, all that painful stuff is like, sure, it's fine because there's going to be whatever job you have is going to have those sort of pains and sufferings. And, I always want to go home. This is bullshit, whatever it might be. But in the same token, we're making cartoons for a living, which is what we all wanted to do, and met some of the greatest people I've ever met in this environment. So, like most things, sort of, it all balances out. But there's a persistence, and there's, can you stick to it? Not everyone can, not everyone should, but it's worthwhile.
So, like, now that you guys have had both a 20 plus year career in different forms of storytelling as it pertains to animation or animated elements to storytelling, first off, has it been worth it?
Hell yes.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I totally do.
Yeah.
Is there something along the way that maybe you felt like you would have done differently? And you're nodding your head a lot there, Wendy, so I'm going to go to you first.
Things I would have done differently?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gotten in my own way so much.
So what does that mean?
I think I wouldn't have been so concerned about what people thought. I would have just forged ahead and done what I wanted to.
Right.
Not had so much self-doubt, I guess. But on the other hand, I think self-doubt can be
Formative.
Powerful. Yeah, can help you grow.
Well, I feel like, especially in teaching, you see students, everyone thinks, when you're younger, college is adult. And now that we are kind of in our 40s, it's just kind of like you look back or you even interact with students on the college level and you're like, yeah, they're still very green. And maybe not necessarily understanding the aspects of business as it pertains to this industry. Again, kind of circling back to this most recent video of this woman saying she's going to quit the industry because she was saying not necessarily the best talent gets promoted or blah, blah, blah. I mean, she was basically kind of breaking down the animation industry and how it wasn't necessarily rewarding talent per se. I don't want to overgeneralize, but I feel like there's definitely a attitude of fresh eyes to a business model versus a veteran experience. And somebody did a response kind of saying, yeah, her experience is valid. However, this is how this works.
I don't know. I kind of think that the same environment, the same experience can be very different for different people. What can be good for one person is kind of horrifying for another, like
Right.
The same exact.
Yeah, everyone has their own experience.
Yeah.
But what was one of your hardest experiences as an animator? Is there something that sticks out, or is it just kind of a general idea of I've gone through this enough to know that at a certain point I'm going to have burnout like every 5 years? Or is it like you get a project that you don't necessarily love, but you need to do it to pay the bills? Or is it people you've worked with? I mean, it could run the gamut.
I've been pretty lucky. I've had some really good projects that I've worked on, and my burnout has more been inward facing. I always get burned out with myself and like looking for new things to learn, because my burnout is more about okay, I've done this, what's next? What can I learn next? I mean, because this industry is constantly changing, and I've always been like, all right, I've done this, now what is the next thing I need to learn to get to the next place I need to be?
Earlier today, Mike was speaking at MCAT about
Minneapolis College of Art and Design.
So Mike was saying the best way to learn something is to get on a project. So like basically you're kind of what I think I'm hearing is like you're saying, all right, we want to do this, we want this effect. This might entail learning a new process or a new program altogether.
Yep.
So that is the kind of thing that is probably stretching the rubber bands of your brain in order to learn a new thing. But at the same time, it's two different loads. It's a deadline load and then it's a learning curve.
But that is like the only way I learn things.
Yeah,
I agree. It's like you could have a free trial program, but unless you have that motivation of not only producing something, but knowing it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah. Telling somebody, hey, I'll do that for you.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like start digging your own grave.
It's a gamble. It's a do or die thing. And we moved up to Minnesota. We were working at Star Tunes and working at Calabash doing commercials. But we were still animating on paper. We were doing pencil paper, which I loved doing. and it was sort of at the cusp of everything becoming digital. I mean, we were shooting on film on Oxbury cameras and all that, doing very traditional old school that production methods that haven't changed for a long time. And then when people started animating in Flash and After Effects came out, and there's just sort of other ways you had to adapt to survive in because no one was going to do the old school methods. And we were in a new environment where we had to rebuild our reputations. We just said yes to some things. Like someone said, can you do animate in Flash? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Had never opened it. But you find tutorials. You have a goal in mind for what the project is. You know what the end result is. I've never been a person that like, let me learn all of the buttons in the software before I do anything. All I need to know is what my end result's supposed to be and trust my foundation skills. And you struggle your way through it. Client usually doesn't know, although they might now because if they're listening to this.
I'm sure it's not a new concept to clients.
No, it's not. It's but it's that sometimes you got to jump into the deep end and hold your nose.
Learn to swim, yeah.
And learn to swim. And sometimes you don't succeed and you panic and you got to get out of the pool, and that's fine. But you got to fail before you know what you're good at. You got to fall down a little bit and take that risk. Because if you just try to stay in your comfort zone, you're not going to have a long career.
Yeah, it's my uncle always used to say, and he's got kind of an affect. He's like, I don't trust anybody who's never failed or made a mistake, which I feel like it's true. It's
100%.
It's kind of a little bit of, for me, like this idea that monkey and card that we've all been working on. He's a little bit of the motivation for that. So sticking with the industry through the ups and downs and the obstacles that come your way, let's talk about what has been the highlight of working in animation as a storyteller. What are some of your favorite moments as animators? What has happened along the way? Obviously, you could say recognition and awards, but I'm talking more about the process while you're doing it. What is the little thing that keeps you going through those times when you want to give up?
My recent one, I've had my moments throughout the years. I'll give you two that are, I think, different. One, I used to get very angry when I was learning how to animate, and because I wasn't as good as I wanted to be in my head. I was a genius. In my hand, I was an idiot, and I would get so frustrated if a scene didn't work out that I would throw my pencil across the room.
Is this at your home or in a studio?
At studio,
Yeah,
at
you
Star
did that.
Tunes.
I remember you had a birthday card with a kitten on it, and there was a giant hole through it.
It was Greg had given me,
Yeah.
Greg Shear had given me an adorable kitten birthday card for whatever reason because he's Greg, and I had it pinned up on my cubicle wall. And one of these days, the rage of not being able to get a scene right, and I threw my color erase pencil against the desk, and it bounced. And it stuck right between the eyes of that cat on that card. And I instantly started busting out laughing, and I was cool the rest of the day. So it was that sort of not taking myself too seriously realization. You idiot. What are you getting mad about? You're drawing a stupid cartoon. But, it was my career, so I was panicking. The other one is relatively recently. Was working on, we first started doing Danger and Eggs. I was able to have it was a split production. We did storyboards and animatics in St. Paul. Design and writing was happening in LA. Production happened in South Korea. So I was overseeing my whole crew here, and no one that I had hired had ever worked on a show before. I had worked on a show but never had a show. A lot was riding on this being a success, something that doesn't, a show being made in Minnesota is not a thing that happens. And we were all learning Storyboard Pro, we were learning new software. It was just a lot of new, it was a moving train, Amazon had signed the check. There was no turning back sort of moment. And I was in my office, all the board artists were out on the floor, and I kept hearing giggling all throughout the day, and sometimes just out loud laughing. And me panicking is oh, they're making fun of me, they're laughing now because I'm a fool, I'm a fraud, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I kept it to myself, and I just came out and walked the floor. It's oh, what's going on, what are you guys laughing at? They're oh, just drawing Philip, it's just so much fun, he's such a fun character, he just makes us laugh to draw. And that was it for me. I'll survive anything that comes after for this production, which production a show is not easy, but to know that a character that I created and turned into this thing through a brilliant people that helped get it there along the way, but just seeing the joy and the process that other people were having, that was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind of just like, all right, this is
This
the reality. This is
the
kind of
reality.
recontextualizing.
It's going to, no matter what stands in the way,
Yeah.
this joy is going to be the driving force for this crew. And it totally held up.
Yeah, I got to meet some of your crew, obviously, like Sarah and Drew. Very fun, loving, awesome.
For
people.
sure.
It sounds like a great crew to work with
100%.
locally. And they're still doing a lot of stuff here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Working on that stuff as well. So
Yeah. No, it was, that comes back to the thing of finding your people. That was, people I've never worked with before, but trusting your instinct about people that have clear talent. It's a good crew. And like that meant everything that was difficult about doing that show, being in that building with those people on a daily basis was awesome.
Yeah.
So that was fortunate.
Uh-huh. So Wendie, you had been working at the Science Museum of Minnesota doing a lot of really cool installation pieces. So the storytelling is a little bit different than working on a series in terms of a pipeline and all that kind of stuff. You were kind of more or less the one-person production team there for the most part, from what I understand. I mean, I got to visit there a while back and meet the people that were around you, but they were not creatives per se. As what kept you going in those environments?
I mean, it was mostly because a lot of the work I did tended to be like short form documentary. It would support a lot of the gallery shows we were doing. We'd do these big traveling shows that are still traveling around the country. And for me, it was a film crew, the audio crew, the editor, animator on a lot of these, all these things. And the people that would tell us their stories, that is what kept me going, because like it's a weird thing, but when you sit down with somebody and they tell you their life story, you feel kind of beholden to them.
Hearing people's stories and being beholden to tell it correctly, tell it has emphasis, because some of these stories are very interesting. You're talking about, the stories that you cover have a lot to do. Even though it's like science based, there's a lot of humanity in the stories, whether it's like, I know you did a really cool thing on hurricanes, but you're also talking about indigenous people in the Minnesota area, the content of which definitely weighs more than maybe, just like any type of just animated series or something like that. No offense, Mike.
None taken.
But that would kind of get you more engaged and more involved. And not being able to draw upon many other colleagues in those situations where you are the storyteller, the director, the producer, the camera person, possibly the audio, all these kind of things. You're basically a one-woman crew.
Yeah, I was always partnered with a developer who would, a researcher at the museum that would be really well-versed in the subject matter. And then we'd go out and meet these people, and just allowing them the space to tell their story and capturing it and making them look good. And another aspect of that, so along with the indigenous cultures stories we did here in Minnesota, we also did a lot in Belize and in Mexico, where we were filming at a lot of sites. And I always felt like I need to capture all of this, like to show what this is like. Yeah, because I'm here to show other people what this is like.
So do you feel like, especially in documentary work, it's more of a challenge to capture the reality, or is it more of a challenge to convey a created reality like an animation, or is it just apples and oranges?
There's always, when there's people's stories and histories involved, you want to be accurate. You want to convey it the way they will be happy and proud to be part of. But there's this aspect of it, of the gallery stuff, where we would try to recreate, like we did this whole cave thing as part of this Maya exhibit, where we went in and I was filming, well, you had to swim into this cave, and it was like a mile underground, and we have these guys that are telling us about Xibalba and the Mayan gods of the underworld while we're touring this cave. So I get to film that and record audio for that. And then we came back, and that was part of this gallery show, this opening for it, where we kind of had to recreate the sound and what that was like. Yeah, that was pretty intense.
That's interesting because the one thing I do like about WoMo Studio is that, first off, I love your tagline. It's that storytelling by any media necessary, which I feel like you guys are pretty well suited for with your breadth of experience and different types of storytelling. So like even creating an experience like you're talking, like even sound wise, does that kind of inform any other animation? I know you recently did some animation for the Science Museum again, of like dinosaurs, and you guys animated a giant chicken, right? And then an encephalopod. If you go over to the Science Museum in Minnesota, when does that exhibit open, or is it already running?
It's already running.
It's running now. So by telling stories with different leadership and then bringing your skills to that, what is it like to work under not only telling the story to do justice for the story as a director for your own story, but having to work with other people that maybe don't have the same vision and curtailing to that vision?
Oh, it's challenging in a whole different way because you have to bring everyone along. You're kind of walking this tightrope between, all right, you might not think this part of the story is important, but I sense that person did, because as documentary you end up watching the footage again and again and again and listening and pulling things out that you maybe didn't hear the first time to get a sense of what someone was saying.
So have you ever gone in that direction of trying to tell that story or present it in a certain way, and then you get a producer or a higher up say, no, we don't want that, and it's something like you feel strongly about, but it's like you got to switch it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How do you roll with that kind of thing?
The thing with the museums, a lot of people there are very open-minded and let me make my case for stuff. And a lot of times it wasn't like a clear shutdown or anything. It was a compromise. Like, okay, well, I'll edit this part out, but we're keeping this whole part in, And I don't know, they gave me a lot of leeway and freedom to make decisions, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I had a certain amount of trust of a lot of people there to be able to make a lot of editorial decisions. So
I think it's the thing I always liked the work that you did. We're doing in that realm with these stories is you listened. You were able to put yourself in the audience that didn't know anything about the subject you were covering. So it came across in this sort of respected, authentic way. It's that idea of like, it's not about you. And definitely in the work Wendie did at the museum, but any collaborative creation, remembering it's not about you is hard, because you have your ego with your work and everyone wants to, put their shine on stuff. But in order for things to get done, it takes sometimes more than 2 or 3 people, and that compromise that you're talking about, Wendie, is happening all the time. Creative compromise, because deadlines don't go away. Things are marching things to happen. There's a lot of weight on that, and it's if you are a good storyteller and you can find those pieces under that stress of time, whatever resources you have, all other opinions that are coming in, legit or not legit voices that you have to contend with. If it's not about you, it's about the story, and you hold that through, it'll find its way out. Sometimes it maybe not as great as you wanted to, sometimes better than you wanted it to. So it's sort of how you go into it, whether it's animation or whether it's the documentary the kind of work that you were doing, Wendie, is the respect of the story. It's not my story to tell. I'm here to help you tell your story. Having that point of view, I think, is what makes things genuine.
Well, I also think that it's interesting, especially working on things as a collaboration. Like when I was in Chicago, I directed a lot of live comedy, and there's the words on the page, and then you plug in the people who are going to be elements in it. You know, whether it's an animation and it's different animators, or whether there's performances, like on stage you bring different actors and they are delivering lines not necessarily the way you saw them or thought you heard them, but the way they feel like it should be presented. And my thing that I've always been excited about for collaborations is you're going to get a perspective and a collaboration that you could have never come up with on your own. And it's going to give it's almost its own life.
For sure.
It's not yours, it's not theirs, it's everybody's.
It's that, but the tricky balance, like if you are the director, if you're you're the one you're the decision maker in a situation, in the major hierarchies, however big or small they are, that, because I 100% agree that, like, what do other people bring that I can't? Like, I love working with people that are better than me, and the point of view that Drew and Sarah and the other people on the crew were bringing to Danger and Eggs, like, what that I didn't think of, was like, man, I wouldn't have thought that in a million years that works. But if it doesn't work, being able to say, like, love it, thank you so much, but like, this is just, we have to make a call here, this is going to take us in a new direction, this is going to cause this issue, whatever it might be. The one thing that I think you learned it at Star Tunes, Wendy, or someone told you that there's
I know what you're gonna say.
What is it?
Red herring?
No, the red herring's another good one. No, the idea that there's 1,000 ways to do something.
Oh, that's John.
And pick one.
Yeah, that was John McClanahan. He said there's 1,000 correct ways to do something, and you picked one of them, and the client might have picked another one. It's not saying that you did it wrong.
It's just
that
direction.
people had different ideas about it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's a definitely, it's a world of, the pick your battles sort of situation. And, there's certainly many of times where you're like, no, this is the way it's going to happen. This is the way it's going to happen. And you'll fight it to the end. And you're like, I'll stay here all night until you agree with me. Because the deadline's coming. We got to get this work done. So either you let go or I'm going to let go. And then, but sometimes you find that middle ground.
And there was I remember you talking about there was like a certain joke in Danger and Eggs that you really wanted to put in there, and it might have been Sarah's joke somehow.
The donut?
Oh, yeah.
The donut, yeah, and she
Jelly
fought for the donut, right?
She pitched and fought for that jelly donut, and it was as an obstacle that an old man wrecked a moped on. I don't remember the exact joke, but it was what causes this incident that takes the story in a new direction. And she just had this hilarious idea about an overly filled jelly donut, so when you hit it, it would explode. Like, just totally believed in the idea, and she pitched it left and right.
And repitched it.
And like would go home at night and board it and come back. And it was like, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work with the rest of the story. But she didn't give up right away. And it was a hard pill to swallow, but total respect for the fight that she put up. And that's kind of what it is. Like, you fight it until you if you believe in it, do it. If it's not working, deal with what that feels like, to just sort of like swallow your pride for a minute and go, okay, let's move forward. There's a million other things we have to do, but it's still put up the fight, still fight for your ideas.
Well, being motivated and passionate about it is a good quality to have. Even like, at least there's people fighting for an idea versus like, all right, I'm just gonna
or just like do it because I say so.
Yeah.
Or do it because that's how I saw it. And it's like, yeah, that's how you saw it. But if you see it like this is way funnier. That's a skill in and of itself that you don't know until you're in that situation.
Right.
What were you going to
say? I just find it kind of funny talking about having battles. Like, this is the hill I'm going to die on. We draw. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that I was with you guys at the Emmys when seemed like it was a surprise that you guys got this Emmy. We were in the nosebleed seats, and it was an interesting experience because it wasn't until afterwards, I think, when I heard this story, after Sarah was holding an Emmy in her hand, talking about the jelly donut gag that did not make it to the screen. So it's kind of like
Emmy in hand, still holding on to that jelly donut.
It's like,
joke.
But if the jelly donut would have been in there, which kind of speaks to, it's like what you're saying. It's like, we're telling a story. There's many correct ways of doing it. Yeah. That was just one of them.
Yeah.
And I always think back to Young Frankenstein, when Mel Brooks was writing it with my all-time favorite actor, Gene Wilder. And they were basically, Gene Wilder had talked about putting in a dance number in Young Frankenstein of putting on the Ritz with the monster. And Mel Brooks was not interested. And Gene Wilder's like, you have to do this. This is the turning point. This is comedy. This is where you harvest everything you've built up so deadpan. And Mel Brooks is just like, no, cutting it down. And Wilder was fighting. And it ended up getting in the film. And it's probably the most memorable part of Young Frankenstein if you're just going to think about that movie. The putting on the Ritz.
Right.
That is just ridiculous. And it just holds a lot of value. So it's like, had it not gone another way, we'll never know.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting to see like the battles won, lost, what does that account to? But at the end of the day, we're just telling stories.
Yeah. And a lot of stories are about battles,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of people who've been listening this far are probably like, why the hell are these people on a stop motion podcast?
That was my first film with stop motion.
Yeah, you were saying something like it got lost in a fire, you think?
Yeah, we had
It was like a gas fire in your apartment in Chicago way back in the day.
Yeah. And it was soon after I graduated from college, and all of my films were on film.
Yeah.
And they burned in the fire, so
Yeah.
I have a lot of copies of it, but
But you've had a love for stop motion.
oh yeah.
And I know Mike has liked stop motion, and I remember, and maybe I'm seeing this through my stop motion glasses, but when you were first coming up with the character of Philip, you were creating an egg and a sculpture, and you were creating little shoes and all these type of things. Mm-hmm. You were still drawing it out because I think you are by heart a 2D storyteller, but I think you love the idea of the tangible sets.
Sure.
And also almost like, and this is me projecting. I feel like if you are able to look at the environment and be in the environment and look around it, it's a different experience than if you are going to have it virtual. Mm-hmm. Like you could hand draw it and it's on paper, which is great, and you're able to translate from your mind what you think this should look like. But when you're creating the world and you're able to navigate that world, it's something that is exciting. I don't know if it's more exciting or less exciting, but that's how I...
When I was going to school at Penn State before I went to Columbia, and my film partner, Sean Giosa, we had to submit storyboards for a part of this project, this film that we were supposed to make. That was one of the class assignments. And we started doing it, and then we were like, you know what, let's just build a mock-up of the bar that we're going to shoot this in. We made it out of paper and tape. We made a layout of this bar that we're going to shoot in, and we made little tiny people to put inside of it, and we just took a camcorder and we filmed our storyboard.
Oh, that's
because
cool.
there was just like, it was just, at the time my drawing skills weren't great. Sean didn't have much drawing skill, and it was just fun to like get our heads around that space. We failed the assignment because we didn't do, which at the time it was like, this is bullshit. But looking back, I'm sure he was trying to teach us storyboards are part of the process. You idiots, do what you're asked. Like, this is how you're gonna. But like, we were young punks being, revolutionary, goofy people. But that was fun. It was just like, there is something about understanding a space that way. Yeah, I am not qualified to judge anything because I've never done stop motion. But again, it all comes down to story. It comes down to, one of the greatest things I've ever seen is The Wrong Trousers, the Wallace and Gromit short. And like, it's just amazing, that filmmaking, creature comforts. Like that, I saw that stuff, while I was in school, and it just blew my brain away. I've always have been and always will be a gigantic fan of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Rankin Bass.
Rankin Bass, yeah.
Greatest thing ever. Yes, Santa Claus is a complete jerk in that movie. But Island of Misfit Toys, and just like the Abominable Snowman, like all those things were just so fascinating to look at, and it felt real.
Yeah.
It felt like a world I wanted to be inside and explore. And I also looked like Herbie the Elf.
That is true. Yeah, it was almost like it was your story.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I identified with that dentist, that wannabe dentist.
Yeah. So, kind of speaking more, you said you're not qualified to be a juror on this panel, but I think, again, with your story experience and then your experience on working on different productions, I will say that's not true. But the other thing is, it's like the idea that we have been batting around for such a very long time is called Monkey and Car, and it's set in the late 1950s when space age was supposed to be the big thing and plastics are introduced, and we were the promise of flying cars and
The world of tomorrow.
the world of tomorrow that maybe never was, and we are kind of imagining what if it was, and this is what it looked like. And we've created a little bit of a dramatic narrative between a little orphan monkey and a car that was supposed to take you to the moon. And this little orphan monkey thinking that this car is going to reunite him with his test pilot astronaut mother, who tested this car that was supposed to take it to the moon, but somehow she got stranded on the moon.
Yeah.
So this orphan's trying to get reunited through this car. And this is a walking, talking car. And the idea that we have for this story is that it is 3D environments, 3D elements, and depending on the animation, or even it could be puppet, it could be stop motion, but putting 2D elements on top of it.
Yeah.
The desire to push it in that direction, which has been kind of like where we've been going for a while. The concept art is definitely still a lot more 2D than, stop motion. But recently we were all in Guadalajara, where we gave this IP to a bunch of students at a university. They were called Tech, a lot of stop motion students, and they did some puppeteering, compositing, and 2D animation. And they kind of came up with different proofs of concept for this. What makes you feel like, why are you drawn to the 3D environments and the 2D overlay, or the different techniques of telling the story? What is the motivation behind that? Or is there a motivation behind that?
I don't know. I think it partially plays to the strengths of the four of us that are involved in this project. Part of it is wanting to create a world that we personally haven't seen before. There's something about, the character of Carr is sort of trapped between being an object and being a being and being a character.
Being
a sentient being.
Yeah.
That, he's not sure where he lands or where he's supposed to be. And part of it is just like the pure challenge of it. Just like, can it be? I mean, it's not like no one, there's Gumball that does like the photo backgrounds and 2D stuff. So it's just, let's try this. Honestly, it's sort of a challenge. But the interesting thing for me personally is the bigger challenge has been getting this story, because it is deep, it is rich, it's got lots of backstory. How do you pare that down for an audience that hasn't spent 10 years talking about it?
Right. Yeah.
That is proving to be, I feel like technically we could pull off all that other stuff if we have the project to do, like, okay, we're going to do the shot today. I think we can figure it out collectively.
Right.
It's what is the heart of this story? For me, it's sort of like one last chance to be who you're meant to be. Mm-hmm. But really, like, it's been a pretty fascinating exploration of, like, what kind of storytellers are we? Like, it's fun to talk about. We've been talking about it for years, but, like, now other people need to listen.
Right.
And there's an air of maybe don't tell them everything. And there's the thing when I learned from Wendie, when we started talking about it, because there was a time where you were sort of observing what these idiots were doing. But you said it's about these two characters. So
when you're talking about the idiots, you're talking about me, you, and Greg, or are you talking about the characters in the show?
No, I'm talking about me, you, and Greg, 100%. Yeah. The idea of, like, drop people into the story. Like, it's about these two characters. Let's talk about that night that they met. And there's all this other stuff that we can get there, but if you don't care about those main characters that are driving through the story, all of that backstory, all of that detail is not going to matter.
Right.
It's just going to confuse people.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, the mantra is, well, why is he walking and talking? And the answer that Wendie always gave was none of your business. But there's something about, like, well, we can get to that, but people like a little bit of mystery. People like, it's what people liked about Twin Peaks. Like it doesn't fully make sense, but I have to like, why is this? Why is that person that way? What is motivating that person?
Why are the Norwegians leaving?
Yeah. Why does she have that log? And sometimes you don't get the answers, and sometimes that's okay. We just want to like engage in this story of these two characters, accept this world, this fallen world of tomorrow that never came, and
Not explain everything.
not explain everything because it's otherwise it's
But not, just to be clear, it's like we've talked about this so much that it's not that we don't have answers for each of
We
the
have too
questions.
many.
We have every answer that can possibly be told, but it's not necessarily going to be very important for the story. Maybe for the canon, if we were going to be like Lucas, now they're doing all these different offshoots and all these different things like games and comics
Yeah.
and novels, and it goes into exploration of characters that had a blip on the screen in the main films. They all have explanations, but like balancing is like
yeah.
what this character's screen time is worth this part of the story.
It's like you can read a short story, you can read a Judy Blume book and like be in that world for the length of that story, or you can read an entire set of encyclopedias. What's going to be more entertaining to you? Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in a set of encyclopedias,
Right.
but good God, you're going to get bored. And if you're reading it to somebody, they're not going to be your friend anymore, and they're going to get bored. So you have all these amazing pieces and that we've built. It's learning which ones matter. Like it's like music where you have all these notes and all of these rhythms and all of these combinations at your disposal, but how you choose to use them is what makes it engaging, moving, exciting, whatever it might be.
Yeah, like if every note on the piano is played at once with the same amount
Yeah.
of value,
Yeah.
everything loses.
Yeah. There's no harmony. There's
Yeah.
no cohesion. There's no drama. There's no up and down. So, honestly, more than technique, it's a challenge of becoming a better storyteller. And we've told a billion stories for other people, for ourselves along the way. This one is particularly challenging because we're so close to it, but firmly believe it's, I'm just going to say awesome. I'm just going to say that I really think
agree.
it's good. But like feel like we've had a lot of false starts and about it. Like, this is it. We figured it out. And then
It's like, this is too long or this is boring. I mean, actually, I remember that with Wendie because we had come up with this story that was definitely being told through one perspective and one character and not as much as the other, especially what we were calling episode 1. And Wendie just kind of very smartly pointed out, it's like, is this show called Car? It's like you got to get the monkey in there, or it's like, is it called Monkey? It's like finding out how to tell tandem stories and a convergence, and then in enough of a time frame that people are going to be on board.
Yeah.
Is like, that's, I feel like we're definitely like there in terms of like the narratives that bring them together, and just about how we're telling it and also the form in which we're telling it.
Yeah. I think like my goal for any of this stuff, and it was, for some reason I like things that are inanimate objects with faces and arms.
Funny shapes doing funny things.
Shapes doing funny things is my motto for all design. Car, hopefully, I don't know if there'll be ways that people can see what this character looks like based on this podcast.
Yeah, I'll definitely be able to kind of figure out how to
but
put
it's,
links to
imagine a Cadillac convertible, pink Cadillac convertible walking upright, where the windshield is the jaw and the top lip is the back of the seat.
Yeah, so he's trunk up.
Yeah, he's trunk up, tail lights up, the hood is like his beer gut belly that he's scratching all the time.
His engine is the guts.
My goal, and like I won't be successful in my mind if people watch that and they think of like, why is that car walking and talking? They should go, God, that poor old man is really having it rough.
Yep.
Like, I want them to care about him as a person, as a character, not the novelty of a walking, talking car.
Yeah.
That was with Philip is a walking, talking egg with anxiety issues. He has arms and legs for no reason. It's not a genetic mutation. He's not a robot.
It's not explained.
It's not explained.
It's none of your business.
He has arms so that he can carry his first aid kit, but I have never been asked the question, why does he have arms and legs? Because they just care
Or
about
why
the
is
character.
he
Why is he alive?
Yeah.
Why is there an egg? Like, he's just the embodiment of fear in my mind. He's a delicate creature.
Right.
But people buy into the nervous, anxious, paranoid character who just wants people to be safe versus, look at that, it's an egg.
Right. Well, I think one of the important things about Danger and Eggs, or you think about SpongeBob, sure, you guys could do a little opening theme song that is going to say what we're doing right now, and now we're going to the story. But if you don't have something like a theme, what I think is important in something like Danger and Eggs is it's an egg that lives in a chicken, which we all know eggs live in chickens. And when it comes out, it's talking, and it's talking to a little girl. And that's all. It's like, we are
when you say it out loud, it's pretty weird.
Well, but yeah, it's true. I mean, you watch the original short film you made before the series, it's even more weird.
True.
Philip's playing a cello inside of his mother, and he comes out to an apocalyptic world where there's like bacon creatures and like.
Yeah.
Anyway, and like the chicken destroying the world.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to see the short film, it's pretty funny. But the whole thing is it's grounded in enough reality that it's like we know who we are, we know where we are. It makes sense that we've seen it before, but now you're taking it and you're heightening it to a level that we're on board. Now we're just going in the direction that you've gotten me on board. It's like the train has stopped. It hasn't like slowed down. It's not passing by. It's like, get on the train. You've seen a train before. Now this train is going through the wall and we're going under the wall. It's like, all right, you're on board. Yellow Submarine. You know, it's like you are on something familiar, and we're taking you to a world that you haven't been to before. So just being able to like ground it enough and have enough acting and character and relationship, I mean, you could do that in a few seconds. I mean, when we were doing comedy, it's like you want to know in the first staging who you are, where you are, why you are. And if you could tell that in the first 3 lines, and sometimes you do silent comedy, there's a lot of stuff that is very funny that people will be on board as long as that effort is there and that dynamic is established. So now it's a matter of doing it.
Always a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
Always a matter of getting money to do it and time to do it. But, we do it in a slow, methodical, not methodical is the wrong word. It's not at all methodical. We do it in a slow drip of morphine. Honestly, if it never becomes a film, it's always a fun thing to talk about all of the time.
But it will become a story, I think,
in some way, some form.
Yeah,
it'll exist, and in the meantime, we'll make a bunch of other stuff.
Right. Well, I guess one of the goals I do have, it's like as I look around of the different realms of storytelling I've been in, is like, that person I want to work with, that person I want to work with. And specifically for Monkey and Car, I've been thinking about these people would be good assets to it. So it's been kind of like this whole build up to a degree. In terms of working on things that we enjoy, this is the entertainment industry. What would be your advice to people who are new, finding their way, trying to figure out what they want to do, and people just getting started on that ground level? I know it's like they're probably thinking, how do I prove myself? How do I fit in? What piece of advice would you say, or what would you say to people is like the type of people you want to work with?
Right off the top of my head, I think that if you're given an opportunity to do something, and maybe it's not your favorite part of a thing to do, finding joy in whatever part of a project you're in is magical. Being able to
the process.
Yeah, that process, finding that way forward that can maybe inspire someone else, even if it's not your favorite role in the process, owning it. And
because you've been in situations where you have to tell a story, you're like, oh, this story is kind of like or this character, whatever, this is the client wants me to do this and I don't necessarily want to do that. Or like, I remember working at Calabash and having to draw the shadows of the Trix Rabbit Bunny, or to clean up lines for the digital ink and paint system. And it's just kind of been like, okay, But it's like you're learning something, you're finding a way to do it in an exciting way.
I mean, if you some tasks, if you put them in the context of all things in the universe, it's mundane stupidity that you're even doing that. And it's like, what am I wasting by time, whatever. You can think about it however you want, but like, yeah, maybe this isn't the greatest thing in the world, but doesn't mean I'm not gonna do my best at it. I am like, yes, like shadows, no one's even gonna know that they exist. They're just gonna like assume that's the way cartoons are.
If they didn't exist, people would notice.
Right. But I'm going to not do a shitty job because I'm not satisfied that I didn't get the perfect thing.
Right.
But okay, so the time at Calabash, what I remember is sitting in the room with a whole bunch of people and just laughing. You know, like finding that with the people that you're doing this stuff with, because animation is very rarely a solo art form.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that any storytelling is solo. I mean, unless it is one person on a stage, and even then, you need someone running the lights.
No one does anything alone by themselves. If they say they do, they're probably lying. I don't know. It is about process, people you're around, and the one thing I will say is watching an audience react to the thing you made can be the worst experience in the world if you do it wrong. If it like just doesn't land, if a joke doesn't land or a moment doesn't land. But when it does, watching things with an audience has been my greatest experiences. They're short-lived. Like, you work for months and years or whatever on the thing, and for that one moment, someone giggles. Even if it's one person giggles at that thing that you've been giggling about in your head since you put pen to paper. Pretty satisfying. Like, because it's this abstract thing that never didn't exist before. You went through this complicated process of putting it down on paper, or putting it into pixels, or putting it into a puppet, filming it, moving it around, putting some sound to it, giving it to this person. Like, all these things it went through, and that thing is still funny, or is still moving, or still engaging for that moment. That's where you're like, yeah, okay, fine, it's kind of magic. I'll give you that. Not every day.
Right.
Like, I don't feel like, it's doing magic is definitely not as impressive as watching it.
Well, one of the things I always told my students is just like, all right, it's always fun to watch magic, but now we're going to teach you how to do the tricks.
Yeah.
And it's, once you learn about the trick, you're like, oh. Like, recently I was teaching my partner's nephew card trick. And he's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, how do you do it? And then I showed him. He's like, oh, that's it? So I think the biggest challenge of storytelling in general, like you're saying, is, making the magic work while you still know how to do the trick, because you are looking at it from the other end of it. It's like you want to invoke the fascination, and you want to make sure that you're not too informed by the process of behind it, that you're going to remove that magic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's hard when you're that close to it and you're like literally moving it a frame at a time.
Yeah, things that were once funny when they started are just like, Jesus, let's just finish this shot.
Get this over with.
Yeah.
And you have to it stops being funny for a while, or it stops being engaging, because you're like, it takes so many hours and effort to get that, second of screen time or whatever it might be. You have to step away, get other eyes on it, whatever it might be. But you also kind of got to trust the process. And you get the idea and you giggle to yourself like, this is going to be great. Then you have to execute that idea. And that might be a month of work. And it's really like, you can only laugh at something for so long.
Right.
Danger and Eggs, I lost all the ability to react to what we were making at a certain point, because we were just trying to get done. And it wasn't until we were doing the music spotting with Andy Bean, who did all the scoring for it, that like I was able to see it again, and laugh at it again, because it had been in Korea being animated, and I hadn't seen that episode since, for months since we boarded it. So you sort of forget about it, and then you come back to it, and you're like, oh, that did work. And like, oh, I maybe would have held that a beat longer, whatever. If 70% of your stuff lands, that's a success.
No, I agree. There's like, I've been a part of shows where we thought the joke was going to kill and it tanked, and vice versa. And it all depends on like the fresh eyes of like a new person coming to the project, and like being able to see it again is a kind of a difficult thing when you've been with it for so long. But yeah, kind of just speaks to like the stick-to-itness.
Yeah, that's that last talk. Yeah, persistence and failure is my new go-to words for advice. Nothing wrong with it. It's you know, you can quit if you want. I want to quit every 5 years, like I said, but I don't. You have to have a certain amount of patience for this art form, whether you're drawing or doing stop motion, and you know you're literally slowing down time. You have to want to be there on some level because, like, on paper, it's torture. It's a really terrible thing to say. Like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the next 3 years, and I want you to move this thing just a little bit at a time. Trust me, it's going to be the most amazing thing in the world.
It's Sisyphus.
Yeah, it's it can feel like this is dumb. Why am I doing this? How many times do I have to redraw this eyeball to get it right? But when you do get it right, you're pretty satisfied. But again, not all Tinkerbell dust.
Yeah, so you kind of brought that full circle. A couple more questions. First off, do you guys have like animation that really inspired you either to get into animation, or when you got into animation you started getting exposed to like different forms of animation that really spoke to you, that maybe informs your sensibilities or your ambitions or something you emulate?
Oh, mine was definitely Popeye.
Popeye?
Popeye.
Why?
Without a doubt. I don't know. It just connected to me, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to make that world. I wanted to live in that world, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that Works originally for Popeye?
Fleischer.
It was
Fleischer.
Fleischer? Okay. Okay, so Popeye when you were a kid. What about you, Mike?
It was Tom and Jerry.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely Tom and Jerry. Droopy definitely fits in there, but Tom and Jerry was my thing.
The original classic one, not like the 60s remake.
Not you know, they all have their merits.
Yeah.
But no, I'm talking like the 40s ones, MGM stuff. The humor without talking, the rhythm of the, I don't know, like it's probably hindsight as an animator. I think about it. I didn't think about that shit as a kid. I was just entertained and couldn't wait till, you know, Tom was singing jazz with the upright bass, singing "Is You Ate My Baby." Would be like it would be like that one time in the morning before school when that came on. Like the whole day was great after that. I don't know. There was something about the fascination of that. Like I am purely entertained constantly, and I'll watch that same episode. It's the first time, like, you know, the idea of binging or streaming or whatever. Like I could watch those episodes over and over and over and over and over again. I mean, it's still like I've, you know, Warner Brothers, Bugs Bunny fan and all that, but something about those MGM cartoons stuck with me. Yeah.
So when you got into like school, were there any short films that you saw that were kind of like, oh, animation is more than the cartoon I grew up with? It is also can be an art form. It can be expressed in many different ways, and storytelling, it isn't necessarily character driven. I don't know if there's like any type of films that you might have seen like that.
Oh, the Big Snit.
Yay.
Blew my mind.
Big Snit. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was one
I
of
saw
mine,
that
too.
movie. I just wanted to shake my eyes all over the place.
Yeah.
That's a reference to the movie, so if you haven't seen it, that joke will be awesome.
Yeah. Now, give just like a quick perspective on what the Big Snit is.
Go ahead, Wendy. You got it.
Well, it's two characters in a room that are just, you know, going through their normal everyday lives and kind of annoyed with each other, and
Again, grounded in a relatable experience, and then just kind of goes off in its own.
It's all happening during a nuclear war.
Yeah. But they're completely unaware of
they're-
it. They're
they're
playing
playing-
a game of Scrabble.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, the dynamics of a relationship where the world is just completely falling apart, but all that matters is these two.
And their annoyances with each other's little foibles.
Yeah. And their ability to sort of like come back around, or he's playing the accordion for her and remembering their date on the boardwalk. The timing of it, I'm so glad you said that because it's also one of mine. That like I haven't laughed that hard in like at a cartoon as an older, you know, not a kid watching cartoons in the morning. Big Snit.
What was the other one? I think the same artist did.
Waiting?
It was about procrastination,
Waiting.
where he was supposed to like do his piano recital.
Called Waiting.
It's called Waiting. Oh yeah, it's called Waiting.
No, it's with the piano.
Richard Condy, a Canadian animator, by the way, is the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about that. The pacing of that comedy killed me. I said earlier about Wallace and Gromit, the wrong trousers, the way that penguin with just black dot eyes was the evilest penguin I've ever seen.
Some of the best acting on a simple character.
Yeah.
I mean, deadpan.
Again,
in
it came
comedic
back to
moments.
the dynamic of those two main characters. And again, this is like being intellectual about it, like gut reaction stuff. Yeah, the Big Snit is there. There's this film that was done all with typewriter keys.
Umskarnu.
Yeah, with
Primiti
like,
Too Taa.
yeah, Primiti Too Taa.
Primiti Too Taa.
Yeah, I remember that. Primiti Too Taa.
It was, look it up, folks that are listening to this. But it was just done with like they removed the dismantled a typewriter and just did this word poem that the letters using just pushing the typeset into it, where the words moved in the way that they sounded. They weren't real words at all, but like so much motion out of a simple thing I'd never seen. That's just like not what you see Saturday morning. That blew my mind. The one we always talk about, balance.
That's one of my favorite. Definitely.
Yeah.
Not like universal storytelling.
Yeah, that's an amazing one. This idea of like storytelling without dialogue, which is funny to say considering if you've seen Danger and Eggs, there's a lot of dialogue in it. But there's just that challenge of like make me laugh without saying a word.
And the mundane. I don't know why, but mundane situations in animation always kill me.
Well, I think it's just like people are looking for relatability. They want to connect. And one of the things that I'll say with those films and even the stuff that I've seen from you, it's like I feel like an audience can watch a story or receive a story two ways, with their head or with their heart. And relatable experiences, mundane experiences are like where people live most of the time. So to be able to connect on that level, it's like you're watching with your heart. And it's like just seeing Wallace and Gromit like navigating being roommates or forgetting a birthday or, being just inconsiderate of each other, just, having to deal with the other one who's in a relationship. It's like all these different, like simple, relatable situations that really birth out these wonderful dynamics that tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's your, as storytellers of any, whatever your medium is, whatever your technique is, it's, that is your gift, your responsibility, or whatever, is like all the things that we all experience, whatever it is about you as a filmmaker, animator or not, whatever it might be, as a storyteller, to take all of those things, like we were saying with Monkey Car, taking all those pieces and let me show this to you again, in a safe sort of way, like you're just watching it removed a little bit, just gets people to have that relatability and just sort of connect to things. And animation has that way of, you can personify those feelings in a way that is more difficult in live action, I think, where like it just hits you, you just feel it, you react to it.
I mean, you're able to apply techniques that are just outside the realm of humanity.
Yeah.
You're able to hyper focus or emphasize.
It's and to like take it. I'm sorry if I'm rambling all over the place, but if you take it down to the most base level and even not be that intellectual about it, is timing, which is what animation and storytelling at all is really based on. How long you choose to hold on something before the next thing happens can either be funny, make it terrifying and stressful, make it boring, make it engaging, just by like, I'm gonna do a thing for 8 frames or I'm gonna do it for 16 frames.
It's a whole different story.
Is it gonna, if a character's walking on an 8-frame beat, that's different than a character that's walking on a 16-frame beat. Why? And it's something that's just, you just feel it. But that idea of that manipulation that you can do with time and images, is pretty fascinating. It's now that I can look back at like Tom and Jerry and like study from it, the thing that I've based my timing off of, I think a lot of animators have from that, that study it at all, is music-based, that you don't hear necessarily, but a music-based rhythm for timing. They did everything on 8 frames. I mean, they used to time it on bar sheets, which was just blank musical sheets, right? And so if you had a 4/4 time and a character was walking on that beat,
It's like the eighth stanza is
yeah,
always going to hit.
yeah, and then all of a sudden you take that away because you establish, then you're supposed to, then you're like, something's different, something's new. If you establish that beat and then you hit it early, the audience is shocked, and just by shifting a couple frames here or there is fascinating to me. And sometimes it's mathematical, sometimes most of the time it's gut feeling. I do everything. 8 is my starting point, and it's like, okay, double it. What does 16 frames feel like? And sometimes it's watching, and it's easier to do now because we're not shooting on film. You can watch real-time playback. Is like, he's gonna hold this pose, and then you're just gonna play it, and then I'm gonna hit pause. Okay, and he needs to look left there. Why? Because he's thinking about something, and he's afraid to look left at that moment, whatever it might be. Getting inside of that level of control and manipulation of time in a character's face, which essentially, again, just lines, pixels, or clay. If you really think about it, it is pretty fascinating that you can cause an emotional reaction based on how long you choose to do or not do something on screen.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, all of that is completely valid. I feel like as people, we're always looking for patterns. Whether it's the ticking of a clock, a metronome, when you're walking, how people march sometimes if they're walking in a group. There's this need to like see patterns and repeating patterns. Somehow that creates it helps us make logic of the world sometimes, or it helps us go through the world and figure out how to pace the world. And when you've created this thing that might be artificially driven or just intuitively driven, and it's disrupted, it could either be comedic or tragic or both. And yeah, depending on where that lays out, I think it's probably, for me, I think timing is probably the most important of the 12 principles.
Timing and space.
Timing and space, yeah.
Timing and space will get you humor and a sense of weight.
There you go.
You can learn all that other shit.
Yeah.
But really, 2. That's all you really. 2 principles of animation, you'll be fine.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, speaking of timing, that's pretty much, I think, how we're going to wrap up right now.
Sounds good.
Mike and Wendie, thanks for taking the time to talk about this. I'm looking forward to you guys being at the
it's gonna be fun
at the fest and whatever future projects we work on together or talk about forever. I'm glad that we have been able to do that thus far, and
what happens next.
Yeah, thanks for joining, and that's it.
Bye.